Shalom and welcome with Pinternovsky. I actually struggled a bit with the title. Well, nothing unusual, but so it is. Though this message is a bit more focused on Europe, or more precise, the evil onion. But I think part of it you can also translate to America or other nations, or especially the alphabet soups like UN, WEF, and similar all over the plane. There are a lot of talks, either you name it conspiracy theory or truth factory. Since I'm not Gen X or Z or whatever the latest, as long as I live, I remember all the fear-mongering news from the climate loons with many of their fables, which I believed for a while when I was young. Though more and more I could see none of their predictions came to pass. Only taxes increased, and I started to recognize they are nothing but liars. Whether running out of oil, global warming, a new ice age, ice melting with many nations being underwater within a decade or two, all just fairy tales. Well, that's the reason why all the climate billionaires built their gigantic mansions by the ocean. As they surely expect their oversized properties one day will be drowning by the increasing sea level, they already have their 300 or 400 feet diesel-powered eco yachts in place. Well, currently I live straight by the sea, a few meters away. Okay, it's not a villa, almost a ruin, a small stone house that I will rescue for some friends and make it inhabitable until the big earthquake in Revelation 16 verse 18 will knock it down. I'm long enough by or near the sea and try to find the rising of the sea levels since decades. Well, I may order a drink with ice and let the ice melt before drinking and see how much water spilled over. Anyway, every decade, the streamline liars come up with a new campaign that the world will run into a new apocalypse if we don't act quickly. Carbon taxes surely brings a lot of benefits for the climate, or shall I say for a small group of certain mansion owners by the ocean and their friends. The only solution they seem to have is to starve the ordinary population by more taxes, rules and regulations. And the lunatics in parliament, as usual, all comply and go crazy, expecting a few breadcrumbs for themselves. And as for me, living in the evil onion, I see their destructive work with their wicked witch as the head. It was hardly enough that Yeshua gave me lately a word about her, or better against her. A cloaked sewer pipe or of a toilet that doesn't stink as much as this area in Brussels. And I know what I'm talking about because plumbing is part of my work. Really wondering how it will be when these people in high places stand before the great judgment, before Yeshua. Scary just to think about how one after the other will be cast into the lake of fire. How many of those camels will be able to slip through the eye of a needle? Only Yeshua knows. But I think they might also realize more and more people wake up to the climate fraud, all their lies. And so it seems, especially since the COVID season, with all the murdered and maimed people, they work very hard trying to ignite a war against Russia, a world war basically. Now, when you hear the answers of these puppets in parliaments, if they will send their children of military age to the front, all give a synchronized answer. None. No. Not one of them will do that. They're all sissies. And for themselves, they might say, oh, we have to rule the country. We can't go to war. Actually, this is somehow true. The only little mistake they made in their speech is one word, the word rule. When correct, it should be, we have to ruin our country. As they have been instructed by their puppet players, and in several countries they are pretty advanced already with their destructive plans. Now I have a question for the European misleaders in their mad climate ideology. And I can ask, same to the main players basically the banksters who always were behind all modern wars. I'm wondering if anyone ever asked how they want to reconcile war with a climate hoax. Does the EU countries already produce e-tanks, e-missiles, and e-bullets? Yes, I know laser weapons already exists, but how will they operate when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine? Do they have enough battery backup, or have they enough artillery to paddle the bikes with generators? I heard some tests with solar or battery-driven aircrafts, but still I have not heard anything about e-bombs they can carry and drop. We know of refueling airplanes, or whatever the proper term, but how long does it take to charge a e-fighter jet? Combat range, maybe 300 kilometers by the speed of Mach 1, and then they need to be charged again for 2 hours. At Mach 2, the range might be only 150 kilometers, and at top speed, maybe Mach 3.6, may end in 30-kilometer distance if fully charged and no load. If they're half charged and fully loaded, after takeoff, they just loop and land right away. Okay, let's get a bit serious. Fact is, a push to zero emission and at the same time run for world war makes them the greatest hypocrites ever in all human history. If they would not have their order-following slaves behind them, their power would be gone within a day. But police and military, to probably 99.99% throughout history, always blindly followed orders, regardless how tyrannical the leadership. And I mean with a tyrannical leadership like Ceausescu, Franco, Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Mao, and many more. So a tyrannical leadership not by the definition of Western propaganda machinery, but the real ones. A classic example was Gaddafi, who was taken out, labeled as a brutal dictator, when he was not. Wondering how long, for example, the current president of Burkina Faso will survive. On the other hand, the EU, labeled as a commendable democracy, is nothing but a dictatorial regime in disguise. And with the help of UN, WHO, and whatever shady secret societies, it might be just a matter of time with the order followers to be completed, if it doesn't collapse before. So the push for war, where COVID was a test for compliance, to push the population into another diabolic plot, is just to hide their lies and murder they already committed. And speaking about hypocrisy, just think. Consider the amount of pollution, including their holy CO2, carbon, whatever, produced by the military equipment already shoveled from the US and Europe into Ukraine and being used or abused there. I think the entire population of Europe could drive with old combustion motors the next 50 years to generate that amount of pollution as only the last 3.5 years by that silly war. And it is not yet finished. Add to that the 2-year bombardment in Gaza and the surrounding countries of Israel. The current ceasefire there may not last very long, or might be anyway fake. Soon enough, perhaps a broken missile might accidentally repair itself and fly out of Gaza and land somewhere in Israel, and then the pollution show continues. Who knows? Now all that hypocrisy says enough about the insanity of the climate-fable and their inventors. Wondering how many people believe seriously that humans are able to make any change in the climate. The discussion about the ball Earth and the flat Earth, for example, might be a little bit more difficult to solve, but climate change caused by humans and cow farts, come on. Who believes that? I think the ones who believe the climate lies have no more intelligence than a loaf of bread, but a cheap, tasteless, fluffy white bread. Possibly a good rye or spelt bread contains more brain and definitely beats all the ones who glue themselves on the road. The good news is as mainly almost all leaders are so bullheaded to push their agenda where we can see the fulfillment of biblical prophecies in their fruits and look forward to the end. Hallelujah. It's absolutely incredible to see the end of this age. When I first came to faith around 1980 or so, I never thought the world will turn so rapidly into a... You can insert your preferred word in your desired language and slang there. But with all the modern madness, I am excited to go home. More and more with each passing day. Okay, took a little bit longer than expected, but the day will come. That's for sure. How soon? I don't know. May I can just get to finish my book and may or may not see the death of the hypothetic hypocrite, hypomania and hypomaniacs, but surely not the zero carbon year 2050. Not in this world. I have no clue how the millennial season will be numbered, possibly by Yeshua's correct clock, but that's another kind of warmth. So, but I think enough with the hypocrites, enough with this message. Could be much more to say with weather manipulation and so on. But I only wanted to keep the focus on these two contradicting pieces with net zero and war at the same time as a hypocrisy beyond measure. And I'll be mightily blessed and Adonai be with you. Shalom, shalom.